152 yards. Should be just a nice, comfortable 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yo, what up, friends? Welcome to the season finale of Preferred Lines. We are here. We have arrived to East Lake. More on the event in a minute. Thank you for checking out the show. This is a golf gambling podcast streaming live on YouTube and Twitter right now. Audio versions available on iTunes and Spotify shortly after. Welcome to the Golf Gambling Club, your weekly meeting. This week, here's what we got on tap. I'm going to do a quick course preview of East Lake. I'm going to bring on a special guest, the PGA Tour Caddie. My buddy John Rathouz is here to join me. I'm just going to ask him some questions that I want to know about the relationship between caddy and player. We've seen it come up quite a bit lately. I think it'll be a great insight to have him on the show. We'll talk through the betting boards, both the 72-hole stroke winner as well as with starting strokes. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. I will do my best to ask those to John. A great resource to sort of fire away. He has told me that he's willing to take on sort of anything tonight. I'll wrap up with my final thoughts. If you're here, thank you. I appreciate you. Do me a favor. I'm going to ask anyone who's here checking this out to hop over to the YouTube page really quickly. Go to YouTube, Preferred Lines, hop there just so I can see your comments because I can't see those that are within the Twitter feed. Please post your Twitter username, post your at whatever into the chat. I want to be able to follow you. I want to be able to reach out to you for something special that I have planned after this show. I really didn't want to hype this up before. I wanted to make sure I got people who are watching this thing live to sort of cue in. Okay. Beyond that, Fantasy Points, Media Group, proud to be a member of them. Lines 22 is the promo code, 10% off a monthly sub over there. They're starting to wrap up the season. Things are getting better. They're building optimizers. They've got projections. They've got new tools. They've got a great content team over there. I'm happy that they are able to support the show. Here's what we have this week presented by them. East Lake Golf Club. We know the Donald Ross premium course on the PGA Tour, par 70 on the longish side, but not too long, a little over 7,300 yards, only 2 par 5s on the course. Bermuda grass greens, Zoysia fairways, beautiful, narrow, demanding. You aren't going to see players tear this place up. It typically plays very difficult. Look in the minus 13 to 15 under range in terms of without the starting strokes that typically wins this thing. Obviously, we have the staggered formula. I have thoughts on that we'll get into soon. But without further ado, I'm pumped to welcome this guest onto the show. PGA Tour Caddie has experience on the bag this year and very good experience from the Caddie Network. Does the Caddie line where he gave out and tipped Patrick Cantlay alongside myself to win this week. Welcome to Preferred Lines, Under the Strap podcast host, John Rathouz. What's up, John?
What's up, Joe? Thanks for having me on, buddy.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for joining me. I know your schedule's busy. You got anything coming up this fall you're excited about?
Oh, man, this fall, it's kind of, for me, it's like, I don't know what's going to go on this fall. There might be a couple times out there looping. I might drop in on an ESPN live broadcast. I have no idea what's going to go on, but I'm going to keep hustling with the Caddie Network. We're going to keep doing our thing, the Under the Strap podcast and the Caddie line and catching up with caddies in general, just promoting caddying.
Fantastic work that you've done. If you're not following John, you absolutely should. You see the name up there. It's at Rathouz on Twitter. Listen, I wanted to ask you, so you caddied a couple of times recently over the summer for Steven Yeager. We've had seen a lot of shifts lately in the caddy player game. What's the player caddy contract situation like? Is it very informal? Is it like a handshake? Hey, let's do it this week. Or is it like written out contracts? This is how much I'm paying you. This is how long you're on the bag for. What's that typically like with a PGA Tour player and their caddy?
So honestly, it couldn't be any more informal and handshake. Now, I got to think there's some guys out there that have some sort of contracts written down when you're starting talking about these guys that are caddies that are pulling in millions of dollars and stuff. But honestly, it's kind of the beauty of it all is that, it's a handshake, it's a phone call, it's a can you be there? And you kind of wheel and deal a little bit when you're setting up your terms, and those can always be changed. But yeah, that's kind of how it is. And I think that also makes it a lot easier for, like what you're saying, when it's time to cut ties. It's not like you're all bound up in a contract. I can't let this guy go. It's, it's week to week. It's paycheck to paycheck, no guarantees, and if your guy's doing good, you're doing good. And if he's doing bad, if he's a nice guy, he's maybe taking care of you a little extra. Maybe he gets injured, he throws you a little extra. I mean, it all depends on your player and use relationship. Some players are more generous than others. So, I mean, there's a lot of different angles on it, but by and large, it's a handshake kind of thing.
What are the expectations like between the caddy and the player on the week of an event? Like, is everything sort of like, are they taking care of all your expenses, number one? And two, like, what's the expectation for you? When do you get to the course? How soon before the player are you there? Are you there on a Monday? Like, walk me through kind of like briefly a week.
Yeah. So, I mean, the expectation is, that you're first of all, I guess you get paid an upfront salary basically for the week.
Okay.
And that's going to cover all your expenses. So I book my own flight. I book my own rental car. I book my own place to stay. Now, there's different circumstances where that gets changed. Sometimes you go out of the country to play a tournament and your player's like, hey, it's more expensive. I got that plane flight. And then here's your weekly check. As far as like when you got to be there, if you're going from 1 week to the next, Monday's typically a travel day on tour. You get started maybe Monday night, Tuesday morning. I always like to walk the golf course if I can on my own beforehand, or at least 9 holes, particularly if it's a course my player's never seen before, or maybe I've never seen it. So when we go out in the practice rounds, we're not flying blind, both of us, or, I'm already one step ahead. I mean, that's the whole caddy game, is how many one step aheads can you have on a daily basis, a weekly basis? Now, I remember when I went to work for Martin Laird, right before the Players Championship, we had never worked together before. And my wife and I had a baby on the way. And I said, hey, we've got this Monday. We're going to go look at the baby and the ultrasound. And he's like, dude, I get it. But Tuesday morning, you got to be there. And so you get a little few things there and there. But there's also some guys that, you got to be there this time, this day, being on time. I mean, show up, shut up, keep up. I got let go years ago by Brett Wederick, 2011. We had a win together on the Korn Ferry Tour, played really well. Unfortunately, I decided to stay by myself 1 week at a Hampton Inn in Wichita, Kansas. I thought I was flying high. He was paying me good. And I slept through my alarm. And I missed our meetup time by a good bit. And we were doing great. And he called me the next day and he said, dude, I love you, but I can't trust you. And that sucked. That was a hard lesson. And Brett and I we were really doing good. And I'm not saying he hadn't heard much from because of me, but he ended up getting injured and kind of falling away. And that was a really tough lesson. I mean, I was already, 7 years into caddying, but that's, you really got to take care of your P's and Q's, cross your T's, dot your I's if you want to be successful at the gig.
Show up, shut up, keep up. You mentioned that, and it brings, a thought to mind. A guy, Paul Erickson, I believe is his last name, asked when I put this out that I was going to talk to you, how hard is it to get your player to not hit a shot that he wants to hit, basically? And of course, Jordan Spieth and Greller come to mind, right? It seems like they're in this situation like every other week. Your boy wants to pull something off. It's a bad decision.
Yeah.
I'm sure it differs obviously for every person in the relationship sort of on and off the course that you have with them. But where are the boundaries? Like, are you able to step in and just be like, no, like, don't be stupid here. Like, this is not the right decision. Or are you just there to sort of keep your mouth shut and ultimately hand him the club and reiterate confidence that he's going to be able to pull it off when it's not the right call?
Yeah. In most cases, the latter is right. I mean, you're really trying to at least make him feel confident, even if it's a 2 in 100 kind of shot. It's harder earlier on in a relationship. You want to keep your job. You don't want to overstep too much, but then at the same time, like when I went to work for Jaeger, for example, I'd never worked for him before, knew him. And he told me right away, he goes, I don't like having regular caddies. And I don't know if he's always going to be this way, but he said, I don't like a caddy being afraid of losing their job. So they're not going to tell me what they think. And I was like, all right, this works for me. Like, I'm just filling in, man. And we really got along really well for those couple of weeks. And, hopefully there's another one. But yeah, I mean, when your player's about to do something stupid, you do have some opportunities to step in there. You better have some facts. You better have some alternatives. And the one with Spieth and Grella the other week, I mean, obviously Jordan looked to be in a mental space where he wasn't even open to, being talked out of it, which was tough. And you could tell that Michael figured that out after a little while. I mean, they've been around enough together, and he's seen him pull off these amazing shots. And he's like, I can clearly tell I'm not going to win this argument. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, dude, I'm going to break every club in your bag. You're not hitting this shot. The cameras are right there. Like, that was tricky because I know Greller knew that it probably wasn't going to happen. But at the same time, it's the second round, or it was the second or the third round. Like, the time of the tournament makes a big difference too on when you have to make that call. You hear Bones with Phil, that whole veto power thing that comes into place. So, I mean, sometimes you got to come in there and say, dude, no way, and talk him some sense into him. But if you don't have facts to back it up, then you might as well just step aside. And he might pull it off, but, if he doesn't, you at least better support him.
When we've seen like some of these players who will switch a caddy and then immediately it flips a switch for them, and they find a level of success, and they find something that they've been searching for in terms of a win. I think about Zalatoris. I think about Scotty Scheffler. These type of players this season who made that tough switch. Justin Thomas was another one. Even though he had some success, I think, switching the Bones took him to another level, and he realized that. Mm-hmm. What is it? How important is the team aspect? Because I've always thought, it's such an individual sport, but it does really feel like to me that it's an entire team around a player that ultimately makes him successful.
Sure.
Brooks often talked about this actually very openly, that it was Ricky, it was his chef. And like when he had his team and his trainer, like Pete Brooks, when he was bringing Team Brooks to a tournament, like he was there to win. And like, that's what he needed for success, because they fueled him. They gave him that confidence. Mm-hmm. How monumental is a player making a shift like that? Do you feel like it's just happenstance that they happen to get that win right after? Or is there really a lot to that relationship, and a small change like that can really lead you to take off?
Yeah. So what's interesting is that oftentimes when you start a job with a guy, it's very circumstantial. It's very timing based. Maybe you get a recommendation, you know each other, and all of a sudden you link up. And oftentimes, the player is like, this is going to be a good idea. I want to hire this guy. Sometimes it's not that way. The agent calls and says, hey, I got this caddy. You need a caddy. Like, let's try it. And that works. So, a lot of times it works right away, right? And it's going good. And you're racking up wins on the Korn Ferry Tour, or you're top 10. And you mentioned those three guys, and you're an integral part. Now, no caddy ever hits the shot, but you're part of the vibe for that week, if anything, mm-hmm. right? It doesn't matter if you've never done it before. And, in my case, I came home for the birth of our daughter, and Martin Laird won that week with a friend on the back. Now, it was kind of a crazy circumstance, but, that guy was there that week, and that was the result. I'm not saying that if I was there, he would have won, but it's just like, you're bringing the vibe for that week, and you're responsible, for a lot of what the player's feeling and stuff. And so in those circumstances you noted, they're all a little bit different. I mean, I think Justin Thomas, his caddy, Jimmy, had decided he was kind of wanted to retire, step away for whatever reason. Bones comes on, great fit. Bones said, this is the only guy I'd ever caddy for. Now, Bones comes with all these accolades. And so Justin's like immediately bursting with confidence. I trust this guy. He knows what he's doing. And we knew that one was going to go well. The Scotty Scheffler one, Scott McGinnis, now with Mito Pereira, great caddy, winning caddy on the PGA Tour. They worked very well together. And then Scotty wasn't getting over the hump for whatever reason. And here's Ted Scott available to work, Masters winning caddy, all these wins. Now he's got more experience than Scotty. You can't refute that, than Scotty McGinnis. So he gets on the bag, instantly puffed up with confidence. And then their schedule just matched up so nicely with all these courses that Ted Scott had been successful at. Now Scotty had played well at some of those, and that was brilliant. And then the one with Zalatoris here at the end. Ryan, great caddy as well. They've done a lot of great stuff together. And there was all this like stuff building up. Like for a guy that had second year on tour, like hadn't won yet, like that's not really a big deal. it's like, hey, just keep knocking on the door. But for him, it was just building and building and building. And it was just like, and he had to just let Ryan go because it wasn't going. And then you knew it's just the law of caddying. That next guy that was going to come in, if he had a pulse, it was going to work out. And that's not a reflection on Ryan at all. It was just like, and I didn't realize that Joel, who came on, had a win there with Ben Crane before 7 years earlier, is a good green reader. I mean, so all these things go into play, and that one popped. That one didn't surprise me. So it's crazy how it all can happen.
How long before you mentioned you left Martin Laird's bag for 1 week? How long were you on the bag before that?
Not long. I mean, I started with the players, then COVID hit, then he got injured before we restarted. So we set out
the Shriners.
Yes, it was the Shriners. Yeah, and I'd probably worked 5 events for him. We were just kind of starting up, and you know, he was playing well. I could sense it was building, and all along I was like, hey, I'm going. By the way, I'll be home this week. And he got an invite actually into that tournament last minute, and literally 6 hours before my wife's water broke, he tapped in at Shriners for the win. And it was crazy. It was a big, from a caddy perspective, it was a kick in the nuts. It was like, are you serious? You know, I was where I wanted to be, where I should have been. And it's fine, life goes on. But I always joke because we named her Winnie. So it's like he got a win and I got a Winnie. And you know, I got to caddy for him a few other times, but at the end of the season, he was like, dude, I love you, but I gotta go. You know, I had some success, this other guy, and I was like, hey, I get it, man.
Is there an expectation that like you're gonna get a little like check on the side in that type of situation? Like, do you think Will, without like putting him out there, having a caddy for 2 years, he leaves the bag for 1 week, you win a FedEx Cup playoff event? Like, are you like, okay, me and the new guy are gonna split this one because he just hopped on. I did all the legwork and he got you across the finish line.
I would say, if anything, in that scenario, I wouldn't be surprised if Will wrote Ryan a check for the exact same amount that he wrote Joel. Now, that would be really generous, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'd also wouldn't be surprised if he didn't give him anything because he's like, hey, this guy's made a ton of money with me. You know, I mean, he certainly paid out whatever, you know, Ryan had a hotel booked for the next week and all that. Like, that's commonplace. Like, all right, here's your weekly salary for next week, you know, good luck to you. But in that case, it was a little different. It was like knocking on the door. And then, it'd be nice if he cut him a check. I don't know. It's not an expectation. It'd be nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting how the dynamic works. And you know, like Tom Kim, you were the first to kind of break the news last week, got a win. All of a sudden, he's changing things up. I can remember a friend of mine who I've played golf with down here in Florida a couple of times is Alvin Choi. So Alvin at the Honda was basically kind of trying to qualify for the event and like sitting in a room, and Sungjae was like, does anybody needed a caddy? And was like, is there anybody in here that speaks Korean? And Alvin is like, I speak Korean. He's like, you're on the bag. They win 4 days later. So it's crazy how this can kind of come in. Like, what's with something like Tom Kim, how could you win an event and then all of a sudden switch it up? Does that make any sense to you?
That was brutal. I felt so bad for Jacob. I was there with him when he took the flag off the thing. We interviewed him. He's like, you know, all the Masters, the President's Cup, I'm going to go to Century. And you know, I've been a little bit more cautious. I do a winning caddy interview, and some of these guys, like Patrick Cantley's guy, like they're there to get, like, that's cool, like, unless something crazy happens. But some of these guys, you get on and you win, or you come up from the Corn Ferry Tour and you kind of hanging around, and you never know. That one, I will tell you with 100% confidence, as you referenced Sungjae Im, Tom Kim did not make that decision. Tom Kim's dad made that decision, or his agent made that decision, and they said, this is what you're doing. I would put 99% guarantee on that. And it's just a Korean thing. I'm just telling you straight up, caddying for Korean players on tour is different than any other deal. And that's nothing against Korean people. I've caddied for some Korean guys. They're great players. They're hard workers. It's just their societal, it's just a cultural thing. It's different. And they aren't always the lead decision maker on their team. And so that'd be my guess on that. They say, oh, you need a more experienced guy. I know he just won, but you need more experience.
Very interesting, man. I'm going to get to this question. We kind of talked about this a little bit before, Brian, but I think what he's essentially asking for, like, your guy's trying to hit a shot, tin cup moment. At what point, like, are you kind of feeling him out? before you're even getting to the spot to try and like put some thoughts in his head, like this is what I think you should do? Like at what point do you go, okay, it's up to you. Here's the club, pull it off?
Yeah, I've always noticed, and I've made some adjustments as I've gotten more experience. Kind of bringing things up in the middle of the round is usually doesn't go great. I had some adjustments on a couple things with Jaeger before we started on Saturday or Sunday. And I said, hey, man, before we get out there, there was 2 lines that I thought we could do different. And I gave it to him. I didn't surprise him, said it to him on the range. Now, that's a little different scenario. But the point is that it's a very delicate thing. These guys are going along. They're playing golf. And if you pull one thing the wrong way, push one thing the wrong way, you're always pushing buttons out there. You're probably never doing as much as you maybe think you are, but it's always easier to make things go wrong than right. So in those situations, you really got to just read your guy, his body language. Oftentimes the way a guy pulls the club out of a bag. I mean, if we're going to do something that's a little risky, but I mean, that 3-iron comes out like that. And he says, the way he talks to you, better read that. But if it's like he's got his hand on 2 clubs, okay, that's an invitation for you to get involved, because you're like, all right, this guy is a little uneasy here. So then you get your facts out. You really try to paint the situation to him. And then that oftentimes helps him make the decision himself. That's the whole job. It's presenting facts so that they're empowered to make decisions. And then they're always got protecting their ego. They might give you a shout out at the end or not, but hey, I helped him here or there. And oftentimes it's saying nothing is the best caddying that you can do.
What a great way to put it. Are you okay, John? Stick around for the betting board segment for a little bit?
I'd love to. I checked him out this morning.
All right, cool. Let me take All right, betting board brought to you by Fantasy Golf Pod. My boys Chad, Josh, Eric over there. Like Wednesday night, last call before the bar closes. They are the last show in town. If you want to get your lineup set, you want to get any final bets in. Fantasy Golf Pod bringing you this segment where we're going over the betting board. Okay, so let's start here, John. Winner with starting strokes. Scotty Scheffler, huge favorite, plus 240. Patrick Cantlay all the way down to plus 330 at DraftKings. He was like 4.5 to 1 earlier. Xander 6 to 1. Will Zalatoris, question marks there at 10 to 1. Rory 11 to 1. I'll stop there.
Yeah.
Like, how deep are you willing to go here, John, with the starting strokes? Like, how far back you think some guy can come and win this thing from?
Yeah, in reality, not very. I mean, you referenced it in the show open there, right? This is a really difficult golf course. And so it makes it for an interesting scenario with this format they're choosing to do now. Like, it's hard to make up strokes. And for the guy at the top, like, you can kind of just even par, 2 under, 3 under. Like, I mean, you're in a really good spot in that position. Now, also, it's easy to fumble and go backwards too. But with so many good players, you know that the majority are going to keep moving up the board. It depends on the player. I mean, I would go further down potentially for a Justin Thomas, right? I mean, he proves to be really well in these situations. So he'd be one that I would maybe be willing to go down for. But honestly, when I look at that this morning, like, I had my eye on one guy in particular, and I saw a bet. I don't know what side it was on, but you could group the top 3 at minus 200 and take your chances.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you had Scheffler, Cantlay, and Xander?
For minus 200, you could do that. I mean,
great bet.
So I don't know. How far down the board would you be willing to go?
So I did take Justin Thomas. I got a 28 to 1. I feel like he, anytime a course is super demanding, I like that. I feel like he did have although it wasn't necessarily in a strokes game perspective, a positive thing. It looked like he was putting with a lot more confidence last week. Long iron play is particularly key here. 6 par 4s that are over 450 yards. Now that's not long. Do these guys show up and are like, man, this is a long par 4 at 500 yards, or are they just like, give me a driver and then a 7-iron?
Yeah, well, I mean, you see these yardages, and there's a lot of guys in the gambling space that do a really good job. I mean, yourself, PGA Tour tout. I mean, these guys that look at the yardages. I mean, Rick Gaiman does a great job at just breaking down courses with overhead views and total yardages, and really getting a good idea for the most part of how a course is going to play. Like, I really admire that. And I have a different perspective because a lot of these courses I've been to. And so I kind of know what hole, a 450-yard hole at this course going this wind direction is a completely different hole, and it changes on the day based on the winds. I'm super intrigued by the what's the new thing that's out now where you're betting on a daily basis, picks. What is it called?
What is it? Oh, Prize Picks.
Prize Picks.
Yes.
That fascinates me because I'm looking at pin sheets. I'm looking at weather conditions. Like, there's so many things that go into play there. But yeah, I mean, by and large, a 450-yard hole these days is, like you're saying, it's a driver and a mid-iron. But you get into a stiff breeze or you have to club back, it changes the game. Yeah.
Another question to just kind of follow up on more of the caddy stuff while I got you. I just have so many. So there's so much and I feel like gambling and in fantasy, I feel like this, but I know nothing, right? But I feel like this influx of people doing content on gambling and fantasy and anyone trying to get an edge has brought so much more data to the table in terms of strokes gained, like 200 to 225. You can pull up Data Golf or Fantasy National and all this stuff. Like, and for you being someone who's kind of like between the two, are players into this? Do you ever bring it to their attention? Like, hey, like Fantasy National has you third in the field in strokes gained from 200 plus. Like, should we try to stick to these yardages? Are players open to this kind of stuff? Are they receiving this data anyways in a better form?
Some more than others. I mean, there's guys that have that guy on their team, right? That's a data guy, and they figured out how to break it down and present it to him. And I think those guys are super smart. I think you're losing an edge if you're not in that space. As far as my caddying, I use the Decade Golf. I use Scott Fawcett. Like, when I'm caddying, I'll email Scott, and he'll send me a spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet, like literally like a graphic of the previous year, and it'll have all the pin locations used, and there's little dots. If it's a bogey, it's black. If it's a par, it's blue. If it's a birdie, it's red. And I'll look at those and I'll see trends. So I'll know, like, hey, if we miss it in this area on this pin, that's dead. And so I will use that to kind of edge my players one way or the other when I'm out on the golf course. From a data perspective, I mean, I had a caddy reach out to me the other day because I've been in this Fantasy National thing for a year and a half now looking at it, and it was a complete mind blow for me. And I got a buddy that's like, hey, and I showed him their stuff, and he's like, I want to show this to my player. And I was like, that's cool. Like, maybe you should wait till your first off to do that. Like, we don't need to start breaking down how he sucks on Bermuda grass at the FedEx St. Jude. But anyways, when the Fantasy National thing blew my mind coming from the caddy ranks, right? Every week you're out there with your player. Now, some weeks I get it, but you're like, all right, we're going to win this week. We're going to do this, this, and this. We're going to be in the mix. We're going to win. And that's why I'm there, right? I'm there to make some money. I'm there to get my guy across the finish line. You start looking at this Fantasy National stuff, and you go, I'm looking at it now. I'm like, well, that guy doesn't have a chance. That guy doesn't have a chance. That guy doesn't have a chance. Now, I'm not saying it's across the board because every week there's upsets and all this and that, but I find that fascinating with the data is that there's this course fit that can kind of bubble to the top. And I think, I've always been into like looking at, course history and stuff. I think the people that are really good at this are able to take guys that have limited course history or not very good course history, but have the form coming in and equate that to a possible good week. I'm really fascinated by that angle. I think the guys that are the best at this handicapping, like yourself, are able to kind of take some educated risks on some guys based on data they're seeing.
I've been called a course history truther many times on this show. I really do believe in it, and I factor it in more than I would say 90 other % of people do, because I feel like there's something to it. I feel like if you were to introduce it into other sports, what's unique about golf is, I came from a background of playing football, soccer, basketball, hockey, these sports with a confined arena that's the exact same spec every time you go it. What's unique about golf is the field changes every week. Not the field in terms of the players. I mean, the actual field in which they're playing on changes. Right. Like if they were to extend a basketball court 50 yards, like the gap in which LeBron James is so good would be even greater because he moves at these ridiculous speeds. His endurance is there. He would have a further advantage over the other players in the field. Now, if they shrink it and do like a half-court basketball game, big players like the post guys, the Shaqs of the world are going to have a huge advantage. And I really do feel like sometimes that gets overlooked in golf and trying to find not only a course fit, but a guy who has had previous success at this event from a confidence perspective and how much that means to an everyday 8 handicap like myself to go to a course where you've had previous success versus a course that you struggle at. Just setting foot on that first tee can be a big difference in how you play.
Totally. And you know, I'll just say this, you know, now I'm not working for anybody regularly, but I'm kind of looking at some of these guys like, hey, I'm going to work for somebody at Napa. So I'm going to get on there. I'm going to go look. Like, I'm looking at a guy, I'm like, dude, he's got some good strokes gained there. Like, if I could pick an event. So I already sent my text to Jaeger right when the season was over. I said, Steven, Sanderson Farms. I go, Seamus had some good tournaments there. I love that golf course. I see you've got some good vibes there. Hey, let's link up. Maybe it'll be a great week. So I've been using it that way to kind of reverse engineering on the getting bags side of things. How long that lasts, I don't know. But
you listen. When you decided, you and your wife decided it was time to have a baby, missing out on the Desert Fox in Vegas was not the best timing on your end out there for him.
I know it was. There he goes for his second win.
But listen, here's who. So I mentioned I took Justin Thomas at 28-1. I'm going to show you my best bet of the week, John, and it's a guy who's starting from a couple of strokes back, but he's familiar with it. He's done it before. All the numbers are pointing for it to me. I bet Rory Mcilroy at 12-1.
All right.
I hit it pretty heavily. First in strokes gained total. He's having like an all-time PGA Tour year in terms of scoring average. Would he say it's been a disappointment? Probably so. I think it's been a little bit of a disappointment just because he hasn't had those first place finishes. But from a consistency standpoint, he's having one of the best years in PGA Tour history, like Tiger Woods. Birdie or better rates. He's been fantastic. If you're going to come back from 6 back on the leaderboard, you're going to need a lot of birdies to do it. He's great there. He's obviously number 1 in driving distance. He did things to even that place in Wilmington that was silly last week where he was hitting some approach shots from. That's a huge advantage, particularly on like a Donald Ross type course with these different quadrants that you have to land the green on in order to get to some of the pin locations. You really have to come in with a shorter club in order to be able to access them. I think that he can do that. Strokes gained total at Eastlake throughout his career, second. He's been fantastic there. I snapshotted the picture that's in every sort of PGA Tour commercial. The course history is there. The recent form is there. I'm not going to go to the top. I thought about Scotty, but I'm coming off a winning week. I'm feeling a little ballsy. I'm going to go 12-1 on Rory. What do you think?
All right. Hey, I like it. You can't bet against Rory. You are right. He is having a monster season. I caught up with Cantlay's caddy, Revy, last week, and then we have a podcast that dropped with him today. But I did ask him about Eastlake because they obviously got it done there last year. And I was like, one thing that comes to mind about Eastlake, and he says driving the ball. Like he's like, you need to be in the fairways there. If you're out of the fairways, it just changes the whole equation because now you're having to judge Bermuda lies into these quadrants that you're referencing, and you get above the pin, you're done. All of a sudden, you're aiming to bunkers on purpose, or you start getting off by 5 yards, 10 yards, and now you're ending up in this completely different place on fast greens. So being in the fairway or like the modern player, like close to the fairway but further down is a good thing. I don't hate the bet, especially in the odds at 12-1. Like that's a cool thing about the factoring the strokes in this week. The guy that I'm on is more at the top of the board is Xander Schauffele. Yeah. And I think you're really getting good value on him in the strokes portion at like 7.5-1. Because I saw in the no strokes, he's like an 8-1 favorite. His course record here is amazing. He's got a win, 2 seconds, a 5th, and a 7th. And he's coming in with 2 wins like a month ago. And he played decent last week. I just really I think Xander's gone to another level in these last 2 months where he is more comfortable out there. For a long time, he shines very closely to Jason Day. Jason Day grinded it out on the Korn Ferry Tour. Everybody anointed him as the great one, but I'm telling you, he's had to earn it as he gone, and now he's faded a little bit right now. Xander's not a natural alpha dog from my perspective, but he's learning the game, and he's won here before. I think he's ready to take down the whole thing. One thing I really like him and Austin, his caddy, are so dialed on the greens, and this is the first year of no greens books, and they putt the shit out of these greens. So I really like Xander this week in terms of like having to, get, not a great return, but maybe be willing to put, a big bet up on a guy at the top.
Yeah, I put that thing at the bottom of the Rory graphic there that he was second in strokes gained total at Eastlake. Xander was first. Yep. Justin Thomas was third. So obviously only starting a couple strokes back. Sometimes Xander, it feels like to me, and this really happened Sunday to him, which is the reason he wasn't in contention, like doesn't take advantage of par fives. And I don't think he got any of them on Sunday, and they were the easiest courses. And had he gotten them the way that Patrick Cantlay, who was number one last week in par five scoring, who was also number one heading into the week in par five scoring, really leverages those. And on a course where par fours are hard and you almost just want to kind of play like level, maybe 1 under on the par fours, if you can go 3 under on those par fives, there's only 2 this week, which should help someone like Xander, who does play these long. He really plays sort of 200-yard par threes really well. I do like that bet. I'm going to switch over to the other market, which is basically without the starting strokes, which is more traditional. So it's who wins. This gets a little cloudy to me, John, because it's like last year, John Rahm and Kevin Na won this way. Patrick Cantlay won the event. I don't know that there's ever been a situation where a player has won both. I'd have to look back at that, but it feels a little convoluted as you start to go down. Like if you were, betting someone like Sung J M 22-1, from a player perspective, it gets cloudy because you could have someone like Scheffler or Cantlay who are up big and they're kind of just trying to not make mistakes on Sunday. Do you think that's a real thing, or is that just a narrative I'm playing in my head?
No, I think here we are as gamblers left on our own this week. There's no tutorial on this. It's like you have to kind of do the math in your head, and then there's a ton of this mental side of it too. Like who's got incentive to just fire up that board, and who's going to maybe be a little bit more guarded if it's right, because there's how many $15 million to the winner of this thing? Like these guys
$4 million for fourth place, by the way, which is it's like winning a live event for fourth. Big money this week.
These guys, is their one chance to be on the live tour this week.
Dude.
And and I was talking to Revy about that too. And he's like, our approach last year was we didn't even talk about it. We didn't think about it. It didn't matter to us. Now Cantlay can pull that off. The one guy you just threw out there, I kind of like Sung Jae this week. He's playing good. He doesn't have great course history here. He's a good Bermuda putter. He's driving the ball well right now, which is what I like. And he's got nothing to lose. So I don't mind a guy like, I think Sung Jae will be focused on this thing the whole week. I was so into Finau for a while. I've kind of cooled on Finau a little bit. I think you're an idiot if you don't put $10 on Sepp Straka this week. At the way bottom of the board. I mean, the guy that's playing really well, he's played this golf course before, a Georgia guy, and he's 4 of his best tournaments this year is win. He finished great at the Players, and then he was at Hilton Head and at maybe Bay Hill or something. All of his top 10s were at Bermuda tracks.
Yeah, he won the Honda.
The Honda, yeah. I mean, so he's on my radar. I'm also intrigued. But I don't know if he makes enough birdies on Aaron Wise towards the bottom of the board as well. I mean, obviously hitting it good, and his putting has kind of come to life. I was interested in Adam Scott for a while too, but then I noticed like when he played Weller in the past, he was hitting the ball great and not making any putts, and now he's not statistically hitting the ball as well, but he's like putting the lights out of it. So maybe he could catch fire. I don't know. What are you doing with this thing? It is crazy. You're right.
I did take Sung Jae, actually, like you mentioned.
Nice.
I think I got 24-1. I also took Justin Thomas to kind of double down on that bet there at 14-1. That's kind of like a normal outright number that you get on JT. And you think about like he's going, like we're not going to have really, if he's going to win, we're not going to really have to worry about him like playing the safe role and like just go out here and shoot 4 even par rounds. He's going to have to fire like a 65 in there and go pretty low. So he's going to play very aggressively, which I like, which I do think is when he plays his best. And 14, like look, it's 14-1 in a normal 156 man event. Now this is the best 30 players in the world, but you might only have like 28 of them. If Zalatoris and Cam Smith, like there's not a lot of competitors. So I do feel like that number is pretty fair. Interesting what you said about Straka. So I bet him I bet him the week before he played really well. I think it was the Wyndham because he switched back to Bermuda. And I was looking at that same thing. I'm like, man, this guy's missed 6 cuts in a row, but he tore up Bermuda grass all season. He's going back to that from the Midwest. Maybe he has a good week. I was 1 week off there. You know, if you're looking at guys down here at the bottom of the board, you want someone who has that really low round, who has a 63 or 64 and has that in him and can shoot another, like Sahith kind of comes to mind. Like he always has that one like 7 or 8 under day, and it's just kind of treading water. And it's one bad day that's killing him, but that happens to a lot of young players. But the ability to shoot 63 when the spring average is like 69 on a day is he's got that.
No, I did take a peek at him and his driving accuracy is not great. And then obviously he's going to be going around here with no experience. His caddy the same too, and him and Carl are great together. I see them winning in this upcoming season.
Is he a veteran caddy?
He is, yeah. He's been out on tour, and interestingly, he met Sahith, he was an assistant coach at Pepperdine. And then Sahith came through, so he might have recruited him. But yeah, no, Carl knows what's up. He's so focused on Sahith right now. Like I've talked to him a couple times. Like I'm on Team Sahith. I'm not doing any social media. Like I'm so stoked about this guy. I'm working hard for him, and
he's got a golden ticket.
Yeah, he's got a golden ticket. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Sahith make some noise this week. It might be a little early for him. Interestingly, this field, like I don't know how many of the live guys affected that. But there's a lot of new names here. And, a lot of guys that maybe haven't, like a JT Poston, great player, having a nice year. He made his way in. There was a few other ones that were a bit, Ryan Harmon's had a great year, but, he's in it again. I don't know who else. Scott Stallings got hot, and he's in the thing.
KH Lee had an amazing Sunday to get in.
Yep. So it's not as strong of a field. So I don't know if you have as many winners in the end of this thing. It's not like all 30 guys I don't think really can win. Not that every week it's like that, but I don't know. It's an interesting field this week.
What are your candid thoughts on the starting strokes format? Do you feel like there's an alternative that is better, or is this just like is this the best of the bad options?
I saw our friend Jeff Feinberg had a tweet about this today or something. He's like, well, welcome to the annual one where the tour doesn't think we're smart enough to figure out points and an outright winner at the same time. And I kind of tend to agree with him. I think what they should do with this thing is the FedEx Cup should be decided at the end of the regular season. And then they should go into this silly season, 3-week banger of a thing, or maybe they want to do something different with it. Maybe end the regular season at Eastlake. That's fine. But it's just there's the drama. It just gets so like I don't even understand how Scotty Scheffler is in the lead. I think 2 years ago, he hasn't won a playoff event, but then Zalatoris withdrew. Like I am a little confused, and it feels artificial. So I don't think it's the best system. I think if anything, terminating it early would be a better way to play it.
Yes, I don't like that all of a sudden, it felt like Cantlay jumped. Like how did Cam Smith, how is he not in second and not Cantlay? Right. Like that doesn't feel very fair. It feels like Scotty and Cam Smith had the best years. To me, and I know my buddy Jish had a bracket sort of that went kind of viral today. I tweeted it out. I looked back in 2018 where I made like a mock little graphic of what I proposed back then. Now, it may have changed a little bit, but here's what I was thinking. 32 guys in, top 4 basically get buys. In every other match, if you are the highest seed, you don't have to win the match. So it's match play. But if you're all square at the end of 18, it does not go into extra holes. The higher seed will advance. So the onus is upon the lower seeded player to beat them. And actually in a head-to-head match. And I think that the concern that most people give is that it's not as exciting, that you could end up like we've had it at Dell WGC with Kisner and Horschel in the finals. And I feel like if you narrow it down to these 30 guys, you're not going to be ending up with that. Like from what I saw from the drama, and this is from a guy with a Patrick Cantlay bet yesterday. I was probably watching more of that USAM 36.
I didn't watch any of the regular. I watched the USAM. I was on Willie Wilcox train. And you're right. And so if they end this thing earlier, and then hey, let's do some match play with it, but maybe not as much as on the line. Like, I think fans would be into that. So I think it's worth a shout.
Totally. John, I know I kept you longer than I told you I was going to keep you today. I appreciate the heck out of you for being here.
Thank you.
Tell everyone.
Can I get one more bet? Let me get one more bet in for you.
Please, fire away.
Your Rory Mcilroy. Okay, I saw on DraftKings you could get hole-in-one odds, right? So I'm on Rory McIlroy at 100-1 to make an ace this week. I just looked at the approach play, and he's going to come with that high ball flight. I don't know if it's a hard golf course to make aces, but if I'm going to bet anyone this week to make an ace, I'm on Rory McIlroy.
I love that. Hole-in-one bet, 100-1 on Rory. John, thank you so much. At Rathouz on Twitter. Appreciate you being here, man. Appreciate you as always. Have a great night, brother. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah, man, that was really cool. I appreciate him being pretty open. I threw some questions at him that were a little bit different. So thank you to John for coming on. Thank you all for being here. I mentioned this earlier in the show. Please drop your Twitter handle in the YouTube chat now. I have something planned. I want to have an understanding of who's watching this show. If you're watching it live, great. If you're watching the replay on Twitter, go over to YouTube, just drop your name in the comments. And I want to connect. I have something that I kind of want to run by you guys. Okay, final thoughts segment, and then we'll get out of here for the season finale. Just moments, man, and enjoying them. And this came to be as I dropped my son off for school this morning. It's his first week in kindergarten. Last week, he was super nervous to go in, like walked him all the way in, had to get basically like a teacher to sort of walk him to his class. And today he just ran right into school and like no look back, barely gave dad a hug and kiss goodbye. And I'm kind of standing there and I'm super proud of him. But it really kind of struck me the moments in life, and those of you with kids will hopefully relate to this, that are invaluable. You can't put a price on something like that. And like all this stuff going around with players jumping to Live Tour, and now the PGA Tour players reacting in this way to create this big money, no cut events, and sort of a punch back at the Live Tour for them to earn more money, feels a bit like they're missing the mark. And I've been critical on all sides, and I should have done a better job of letting it marinate off the bat. But there are moments that mean more than money. And a lot of it comes down to your family. A lot of it comes down to just feeling a reward in self-fulfillment and happiness. And I think back, I read a book really that changed me like 2 years ago. And the reason I started doing this final thoughts segment, which is a little bit off topic, it's not always golf betting, but I wanted to create something that's different that can kind of create a connection from me to you people watching the show. The law of giving, like the law of giving and receiving, it's an energy, it's a dynamic that goes back and forth. And when you're given moments like this and you're able to receive them, the value of that is vast, and it's hard to really put into words and assess a monetary value to it. The importance of it in your life and being grateful. And that brings me back to this, and I'm super grateful. It's my first year like hosting this show on my own, and it's much more difficult for those of you who aren't aware to sort of host than it is to sort of be a guest like I was with Chad. So just kind of taking this thing under my wing and preparing and trying to enhance the graphics and trying to be more prepared, be correct, be accurate, be myself, has really been an important year for me. So I appreciate all of you for giving me that gift of just listening to me, of providing support. There's a couple of people who DM'd me in the last like 2 weeks and just said they just checked out the show and they really enjoyed it. And That kind of stuff means a lot to me. I work really hard to earn a living so that I can do the things that I like to do that make my life worth earning. So it's kind of convoluted there. I wish that I was in a position to just make money off doing the thing that I love, but the reality is I'm able to do that. My basic needs for my family are met, and I'm thankful for that. And now I'm able to just share my experiences and give this podcast out to the world and have people receive it in a way that they're grateful for and thankful for. So I appreciate all of you for joining in on this show this entire season, for bearing with me through many of the speed bumps that I've been through personally and trying to host this show and take it on. But I really just wanted it to be an extension of me and to feel real and to feel like you're part of this Preferred Lines team. And I know it's just my face right here, but I want us all to sort of feel like a team, much as I talked to John about a whole team atmosphere of it's more than just the player. I want this to feel like more than just me, which is why I make this effort to be vulnerable, to tell you things that are going on to my life, because I want you to connect. And I want you to feel like when this show wins, maybe it happens one day, maybe it never does, but at some point, I want you to feel like that moment when you saw a guy at the local bar and then he blew up big. And you're like, I was there from the start. I was part of that team. I hope that you feel like that. When I win, I want you to win. If Rory, this is my word. This is why I asked for your handle. If Rory Mcilroy or Justin Thomas win this week, I'm going to distribute all of those winnings for people who put their Twitter handle in the comments of this. If you're sticking with me for this part of the show where I'm no longer talking betting picks, I appreciate the hell out of you. Put your handle in there. I will find a way to reach you. If it's 5 people, then you're each getting $200 if Rory wins this week. I will find a way to make that happen. Thank you for watching Preferred Lines this season. I hope that you all have a great week. Best of luck at the Tour Championship. Try to enjoy it. Like once Thursday kicks off and this thing gets going by like Friday afternoon, it feels normal again. I don't like it. It's the situation in the hand that we're dealt. Appreciate you checking out Preferred Lines. Give it a like and a subscribe on the way out.